Thank you for watching this tutorial video on creating an assessment plan. My name is Lauren Johnson, and I'm the Coordinator of Program Review and Assessment at CSULB. So this is what the assessment plan matrix looks like, which is actually a template that comes from the Chancellor's office. This is the same matrix our programs on campus use for new degrees or degree elevations. The purpose of an assessment plan is to create a manageable and meaningful schedule of assessment for your program, including alignment of outcomes and the activities that will follow. It's not a comprehensive mapping of your curriculum, but it is a schedule for how you will assess your program learning outcomes with representative student outcomes within your review cycle. For accredited programs, this cycle will follow your accreditation cycle. For non-accredited programs, this will be a traditional cycle of 7 years. We'll return to this form in a moment to talk about how to complete it. Here are some brief notes on assessment to consider as you work on your plan. Assessment can be generally defined as the process by which programs and institutions articulate what students should learn, how students demonstrate that learning, evaluate effectiveness, and make action plans based on the results. Our own assessment policy, established in 1998, states that assessment should be based upon broad consultation among faculty, staff, and students, and that each campus unit should develop and implement ongoing assessment plans in order to provide useful feedback for planning. It is exactly this kind of collaborative dialogue among stakeholders in a department or unit that the assessment plan is designed to help facilitate. Assessment methods can include both direct and indirect methods. Direct methods could be accomplished through the use of tests, portfolios, posters, exhibitions, performances, and so on, while indirect methods would use surveys, interviews, focus groups, and other examples of student perceptions. For the assessment plan, we will be concentrating on direct methods of assessment. Here's a brief overview of the types of outcomes that will be included on your assessment plans. 3 different tiers that work together in alignment. At the course level, we have student learning outcomes, or SLOs. Outcomes we expect learners to be able to do at the successful completion of a course. These are found on course syllabi and standard course outlines for courses. Next, program learning outcomes, or PLOs, are what we expect students to be able to do at the end of successfully completing a degree program. These are more macro outcomes that courses in a degree live within or are aligned with. Some departments have broad PLOs for all students in their majors, and some have PLOs defined by specific degree paths, BA versus BFA, for example. However, it would normally be expected that a department would have a different set of PLOs for undergraduate programs as opposed to PLOs for graduate programs. And ideally, these PLOs should be publicly available on each department's webpage. Finally, on campus, we have institutional learning outcomes, or ILOs, which are skills and attributes we expect students to master by the successful completion of their degree at CSULB. The ILOs encompass the WASC core competencies of written and oral communication, critical thinking, and quantitative and information literacy. These are outcomes we want all of our students to successfully accomplish and serve as broad outcomes that PLOs and SLOs live within and are aligned with. When we construct assessment tools such as curriculum maps or assessment plans, we are mapping out connections between components of a learning experience in order to support student achievement. Okay, let's look now at the assessment plan matrix and how these components work together. As you work on your plan, I suggest starting with column B for your PLOs, which you can see highlighted here in gold. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm using 4 PLOs as an example, but the PLOs in your programs will vary. A good rule of thumb is to try to have no more than 4 or 5 PLOs, as these should be assessed regularly and too many PLOs may not be sustainable. You will notice that each PLO is repeated twice in the column, as we want to have at least 2 direct assessments at the course level for each program learning outcome. While one could have more than 2 measures of assessment included, we also want the schedule to be a sustainable approach for your department and faculty. Once you have your PLOs listed, I suggest filling out column A next, which are the institutional learning outcomes for CSULB. They should be listed by how they align with the PLOs you already listed in column B. Naturally, each program's PLOs will align with the ILOs differently, and as you see in this example, may align with more than one PLO. Your department should already have documentation on how your specific program learning outcomes align with university ILOs, but if you have any questions about this, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you. In 2014, all campus departments completed an outcomes alignment project mapping PLOs with WASC core competencies, which would be a helpful document to reference to complete this portion. In case you are unfamiliar with our university ILOs, you can find our university's 5 institutional learning outcomes by visiting the Program Review and Assessment webpage listed at the top of this screen. Our ILOs are listed below our student success statement in the 5 bullet points you see on the screen. You can easily navigate to this page through the CSULB website or simply by searching for CSULB and institutional learning outcomes through Google or another search engine. Once the PLOs are aligned with ILOs, we want to look at the specific student learning outcomes within courses where students will be assessed. You'll recall that when we looked at PLOs, we repeated them twice to allow for 2 direct assessments. Now we can work on both columns C and D simultaneously, which you see highlighted here in gold. The representative outcomes to be assessed are listed in column C, and here I've used letters to differentiate them from the numbers on the matrix. The specific course where the SLO is used is listed to the right in column D, and I've used capital CS as an example of a course prefix. Please also include a list on your plan of the SLOs you include written out in full. I've indicated an example of this highlighted in gold at the bottom of the screen. So this is the section of the assessment plan which will require dialogue and agreement amongst faculty. To decide which courses are best served for assessment of certain PLOs, faculty will want to look within the degree for representative courses that a majority, if not all majors, participate in and which can serve as an important and meaningful assessment experience, either formative or summative. A traditional way of structuring assessments is to have a lower division course for the first assessment, followed by an upper division course in order to measure improvements. But how departments choose which outcomes to assess varies, and it varies according to their goals and the progression of their curriculum. For column E, you will list the assessment activity that corresponds to the outcome being assessed. These are direct assessments, so could be exams, papers, projects, portfolios, performance juries, exhibitions, and so on. These will likely be embedded assessments or assessments of course requirements that are already used for grading. However, instructors will want to make sure that the outcome being assessed is targeted and disaggregated from a broader application of grading. For column F, you will add the type of scale used in the rubric for the assessment. Is this a 5-point scale, where if a student earns a 4 or 5, they are considered to have attained proficiency? Find an approach that works efficiently for your department in evaluating the outcome so that your assessments are sustainable without adding excessive work for faculty. For column G, you will enter your schedule for when specific PLOs will be assessed during your review cycle. If this is a plan for an accredited program, it should follow the accreditation cycle, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, and so on. If it is a non-accredited program, you should schedule your assessments on a 7-year cycle, which is the traditional review cycle on campus. This is one of the most important areas in creating a sustainable assessment cycle for your program. While it is good practice to assess a PLO at least twice during a review cycle, it is not necessary to assess each PLO every year, which creates excessive work for faculty coordinators and committees dedicated to assessment. So you will see in the slide a schedule that staggers when PLOs are assessed within a traditional 7-year cycle. This is just an example, and you can find the most efficient way of doing this for your program. For column H, you will want to indicate how you quantitatively or qualitatively report the data found when assessing using the methods or tools you indicated in column F. Will you show percentages of student proficiency using quantitative data, or use more of a qualitative analysis in your reporting, such as reporting in more narrative form about how students are meeting expectations? Please find a meaningful and efficient way to report your findings, which will be reported first to your curriculum committee and department before being submitted to the coordinator of program review and assessment for annual reporting. For columns I and J, you are simply listing who the person or committee is in your department who will collect and interpret the data, and how this will be shared out in the department. Will you have an assessment coordinator collect and share the findings? Is this a responsibility of a department chair or graduate advisor, or do a group of faculty share this responsibility? How will the findings be shared out? At faculty meetings? Or will separate assessment meetings or retreats be planned? Please keep in mind, as mentioned before, that this is asking how the information will be shared at the department level prior to being reported to the coordinator of program review and assessment. Finally, for column K, you list closing the loop strategies that will be used in your department. In other words, once you have assessed your students' learning in specific areas, what actions will the faculty take to account for the findings? Will you be looking at your entire curriculum to examine scaffolding of courses? How outcomes are introduced, demonstrated, and mastered? Will you be looking at course level assignments in terms of their alignment with stated goals? Will you be looking at standard course outlines for revisions? There are many ways that a program may seek to implement changes as a result of assessment findings. They only needed to be listed here very generally. Okay, I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me by email. I'm also happy to meet with department chairs and assessment coordinators, so feel free to request an appointment so we can talk about your questions and the needs of your program more in detail. Thanks for watching.